No matter how sophisticated and advanced your society gets, there will always be times when there is no alternative to self-defense, when help just can't get there in time. Even in a place like the United Kingdom, which is about a quarter the size of Ontario, slightly smaller than the combined surface area of all the Great Lakes, has 65 million people. But there are places where help is just not going to arrive in time. And the public understands, much more than the government, the need to protect yourself in those situations. The British government in 1967 repealed the old common law rules on justifiable use of force and put the onus on anyone who did defend themselves to prove that they were not the criminal. And this issue came to a head in 1999 at a lonely farmhouse near Emneth here in Norfolk. A farmer named Tony Martin shot 2 burglars who were in his home, and one of them was killed, the other was injured. And he was put on trial and convicted of murder, given life in prison. It was subsequently reduced to manslaughter on grounds of diminished capacity, and he was let out after a few years. But in that time, the burglar that he had injured actually sued him using public money for loss of income. And that case collapsed. And the British public were asking, why is it that the 2 who broke into the house and their getaway man, with more than 100 convictions between them, didn't seem to be a major concern for the police, but somebody like Tony Martin did? And then there was another incident where shopkeeper Tony Singh got in a struggle with an armed robber who was fatally stabbed. And at that point, the public outcry forced the government to say from now on they would not automatically charge people who defended themselves. And notice that in Singh's case, it wasn't a gun. It wasn't about guns per se. It was about self-defense that actually works. And there was a recent case in Canada where a man confronted thieves trying to steal his ATV. They drove it at him. He shot at them and wounded them. And he was acquitted on most of the charges, though they nailed him on a licensing issue. But even to get acquitted, he goes through that incredibly expensive, nerve-wracking ordeal in court because the state's presumption is he's the bad guy. That is not the presumption of most of the public, and it's not a reasonable presumption. Back in the 17th century, a handbook for English justices of the peace said that if thieves are trying to break into a man's house to rob or murder him, not only is he justified in using deadly force, he may assemble his neighbors to repel the attack. And back then, of course, people trusted their neighbors, including with weapons. It was the criminals they didn't trust. We've come a long way from that understanding in terms of the law. And it is important, and John Locke makes this point, that if someone has stolen something from you and got away with it, it doesn't matter how much it's worth, you have to go to the law to get it back because you're not in imminent danger. But if someone is trying to get you in their power, even for what appears to be a relatively trifling threat, you're allowed to defend yourself to the point of using deadly force, because once they get you helpless, you don't know what they might do. And that is how most people understand that the law should operate. And I repeat, this is not about guns. It's not about a question of can you shoot the burglar. The question is, can you defend yourself with whatever means are necessary to ensure that the burglar does not physically overpower you and do whatever harm he might wish to you or to your family. As the case of Tony Martin and Tony Singh and others have shown, the public understands this far better than most governments. We need to get back to the older understanding that there are situations in which an imminent peril looms, you cannot get help in time, and besides, there wouldn't be much point in calling on your neighbors if they're as helpless as the law would have you be. And when you do that, in defense of your life, that of your family, perhaps you're afraid of a sexual assault, you're not the criminal, and the system shouldn't treat you as such. That was the old common law rule, and we need to get it back. I'm just north of Lloydminster in Alberta, at my friend Danny Hozak's beautiful farm. It's a lovely place, very civilized country, but it is rather a long way from anywhere. You call emergency services, you need an ambulance, you need a fire truck, minimum response time is going to be 15 to 20 minutes. And the same thing is true if you need the police. One of the neighbors told me last time they had to call 911 over an intruder, the police got lost. But it doesn't matter if they don't get lost. If there's a predatory animal or a predatory human being, the police will get here in time to find out what happened to you. They will not get here in time to prevent it. And that's why people in places like this need firearms as tools to protect their livestock from coyotes, to protect their property from thieves, to protect their home and their family and their loved ones from intruders. And if you have these safe storage rules that say the gun's got to be here, the ammunition's got to be there, it's got to be locked up, a bunch of rules that make it virtually impossible to load a weapon and have it ready in time to deal with a threat, it's confiscation by stealth. It's making guns useless without just coming right in the door and saying, hand it over, we don't think you should have it. But it's not just a matter of being out here in rural Alberta, though you feel it more. Even if you live in a big city, if someone is trying to break your door down, they will catch you with the phone in the hand and the dispatcher on the other end, but the police will not get there in time to help you. And yet, Canadian law says you cannot have pepper spray in your apartment to protect you against an intruder, a violent burglar, someone who's high on one of these weird drugs they take these days, a rapist. And they can get to you before the police can. So whether you're in a downtown Canadian city or out here in the rural parts of Canada, you need these tools to defend yourself. And it's just plain wrong that the law would say you cannot make responsible judgments about what to do in an emergency and you can't be ready.